Some conversations will be mind-blowing and you'll sit there and you'll have the most profound change.
So, hi there, welcome to 52 Conversations, and I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself to the audience, whoever's listening. I always think it's really interesting how people decide to introduce themselves, and then we go from there. So over to you.
Oh, it's always interesting how I introduce myself when I'm given the opportunity, because it will depend on the day. Cool. I'm going to introduce myself. My name's Sarupa Shah. I'm also known as the soul agent. And the reason for that is because I wanted to be a travel agent or in PR when I was younger. I loved the idea of an agency. But okay. I was always, as a kid, it was all about soul and energy. You know, I was one of those geeky kids. So it was like, oh, I take people on a different, I do a different itinerary for people. I take them on an adventure to their soul and with their soul. So I kind of married the two together. So there came the soul agency. Over the last few years, I've been doing a lot of work, since 2011, in fact, so it's 10 years. I've been working a lot with people and their money stories. And it's not about money, but it's about money. But it's not about money, it's about money. People have got this thing about money, love it, hate it. And we can talk about that a bit more later anyway. But that's what I've been doing. But it's almost been to cut the overgrowth. You know, if you're walking in a kind of jungle, you're trying to see the path, because the path that people really want is, who am I, why am I here, what am I here to do? But then we get this hiccup with money, and it was because it was my journey, and then I realized actually I can help people sort their money stories out, and that's what I've been doing. But soul purpose and getting people anchored into that journey and actually being heart-centered, not as a label, is my excitement and magic and what I do. And just before we came to this bit, we were talking about gardening. Yeah. Lockdown has made me a gardener, which I didn't think. I haven't got a green dress on today, but I didn't think I had green fingers, and I've developed green fingers. I now understand how to repot a plant that I buy from the garden centre without killing it. Okay. And smashing the roots up. You know, that was all. I just couldn't take the plant out of the pot and put it in another pot without it dying within a few days. And it sounds so ridiculous, but it's something that I'm really delighted with as well. So yeah, I do sorts, like we all do.
Yeah, I mean that's cool though, and I think that's, you know, we've all got our stories around COVID and things it's done to us and and they're not all great. Yet there's some real beautiful gifts in there, right? So gardening would be one for you, obviously, and it's shown. I mean, it's shown you, and I think we've all had things, if we can bear to look at it in a different way, that actually we're like, oh yeah, I learned a ton of stuff about myself. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, it gave me an opportunity to be something else.
I think it had to be, you know, because the way I saw it, we were put on the naughty step by the planet. The planet said, I've had enough. So planes were grounded, you know, factories were shut, pollution changed, lessened. You know, we couldn't go out. And some of us were fortunate to have a garden and some weren't, and there were public open spaces people could sort of access, but not everywhere. And I know it's been really, really hard and all sorts of different things, but we were all put on a naughty step by the planet that said, you know what, sort yourself out. I've learned year before COVID came in, because my dad had died, I said, it just coincided. And I thought, well, now that I'm volunteering in a shop, because I'd applied to be a volunteer in the morning before he died, but we didn't know he was going to die. Okay. To be in a charity shop, and I thought, I'm not going to buy any new clothes, because we get so much treasure in a charity shop. Some of it's still got all the labels on it, you know, and it's not all tat. The tat gets thrown away, you know. So I thought, I'm not buying anything new. So I'd already got into this thing of not shopping, and we, like a lot of us, we aimlessly have shopped. You know, you sort of just popping past here, I'll pop in, maybe, oh, that looks all right, I'll have it. So, but this sort of 18 months of the pandemic just taught me more and more about my consumerism and food hoarding, which I think, having grown up with post-war parents, you know, that tins, how many tins does one need in one's house? and oh, it's on offer, I'll buy 4, you know, and this kind of realizing that actually I didn't need to queue for the supermarket. I had enough food in my house. Okay, there was a top up of fresh stuff, but it was just learning about the things that we do that we have made normal. That do we need to be? Does that need to be how we live? Because there's a panic, isn't there, when you're down to your last tin of tomatoes or baked beans. Need to get more, need to get more.
It's a really interesting point that you raised there. So I've spent the best part of the last 8 years mostly in Antigua in the West Indies. And that,
I have to say, how wonderful.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is wonderful. But now I'm kind of rotating back here, and that's, you know, that's a whole nother story, but good stuff and bad stuff in there. But the thing about being in the West Indies was I stopped doing all the hoarding. I'd sold my house, I gifted things away. I was like, I don't know when I'm going to come back, what kind of house I'm going to have, so I'll just get rid of stuff. And then being in Antigua, it was like, well, I don't need endless supplies of all these things. So it was like, if I had two tins of something, it was cool. So my mindset had already changed around that, and very much about shopping. I think the first 2 years, I'd be really excited when I came back to England. It was like, oh my God, I need to go to all these shops, and I need to look at clothes, and I need to go in the big supermarkets. And by the third year, it was like, actually, it's too much of a bother, and there's too much choice, and there's too many people. So I think for me, I was lucky that happened before in some ways. And then exactly as you say, equally. So I ended up leaving Antigua March the 15th last year, ahead of the lockdown. And then unfortunately, my dad died on March the 25th. So it was quite a sobering thing.
And very traumatic as well in lockdown to experience that.
Absolutely.
Really.
So I think there's been a whole bunch of learnings in there, or relearnings, and I think maybe that's what it is. It's like, okay, we've been dictated to inadvertently, and we've created these habits, and they don't serve us.
No, and I think, you know, I don't think we were all bad in every area, you know, because I've moved into, I don't feel like I've moved into a bigger space than where I was, because I was living in Spain for a little while. So things like books, I really gotten rid of, and things like that. And it's always typical, the books that you give away to secondhand, the next day you want them. But I put that down to comedy. That's just my bad behavior telling me, you shouldn't have given it away, you know, and so I can laugh that off. But I know I used to keep books, you know, that, and if you see like the UK news, I don't know what it was like anywhere else in the world, when they were interviewing people on Zoom during lockdown, everybody was in front of a bookcase, and it was just show of how, you know, how well read they are and how hoity-toity with books. And it was kind of making me chuckle, really, because it was like realizing, that's what having a bookshelf made me feel like years and years ago. Now it's just like, get rid of it all, you know, apart from really special meaning things and whatever. And even then I look at them and I think, you know, you're just cluttering up space, and I don't even open you, so somebody else ought to enjoy it. So it's been exploring parts of life where you have perhaps just accepted it in a kind of surrender perspective, you know, and even now, like the idea of going to a shop to buy clothes, and of course I love clothes, I'm wearing them, I wouldn't, you know, be walking, I'm not advocating walking around in the nod or anything, but the thought of it just makes me think,
oh no, why not?
No, you know,
there's nothing that you miss from making that decision to, I'm just
no,
you think
there isn't. And I recently had this big family wedding where it was like, so it was Indian clothes with like 5 events, and even that I felt was a bit like, oh my God, this is too much. We should be, you know, it's all about simplifying life. Simplifying life isn't about making it less. And then suddenly I got this thing of a panic of maybe I ought to go and buy some new stuff. And then I just looked in the mirror and thought, no, you've got enough. And nobody's going to remember what you wore 5 years ago to another wedding, you know. And these are kind of one-off things that you wear only to events like that. What is it that makes us want to be such a throwaway consumerist? And on one hand, we all want to do things for the planet and make sure we leave it better than we did. That's been my big thing this week. And I think with things going on in the world, you know, more than the pandemic, it's been, when I was born, the world was in a certain state, and isn't the plan that before we go, we leave it in a better place? And that's really, it's really, really come into me, and I don't even know what it, I mean, I know I can say what it means on a very superficial level,
Yeah.
but actually, what is it that I'm contributing to that will lead? Because at the moment, I'm not convinced that we're going to leave the world in a better place, you know, with the way things are going.
No.
And I don't mean to be doom and gloomy. It's just there's so much out there that is just being ignored because people feel like they can't do anything, or how can I, one person, make
Absolutely.
a difference? And that really isn't the mentality to work from.
I think that's a really important point, actually, because it is exactly that. So when you were talking about all the stuff that's out there, a couple of weeks ago, went and bought some furniture from a friend who's leaving the country, and my niece's husband came with me, and then we came back and we unloaded stuff, and then we got rid of some of my dad's furniture that he'd had for 40 years so that my mum could have something a bit different, even though it was secondhand, so kind of recycling. And then we ended up having to go to a private recycle plant for whatever reason. And to start with, we went on this weighbridge and we were like, oh, this is okay. And you could see these big piles in front of us. And then we drove along where we'd been told to, and it was like, oh, go round the corner by the big tyres. And as we went round, both of our faces were just like pictures of horror, because there was just mounds of every kind of rubbish that you could imagine. And we were looking at it, and the smell was disgusting. The smell was just like, and both myself and Robin were like, oh God. And then behind that, there was a huge pile of mattresses. Then there was a huge pile of wires, and there was just all these piles of stuff. And both of us, you know, we sort of realized, oh gosh, we have to get out. And, you know, some guy came over and chanted a bit and said, you know, just throw it there. You know, we did what we needed to do, but we both left feeling really heavy. We felt dirty, and we felt heavy, and we felt dirty because we'd been breathing in everyone's garbage, including our own. And then as we drove off, we were also really like, are they actually going to recycle this? Is someone really going to go into this warehouse where all these plastic bags are open with who knows what in and actually recycle? Or and it just, we were, you know, because we're both of us, my niece's husband, her family, they're very good on kind of being friendly to the planet and doing their own bit. And we still were driving going, are we doing enough? And the answer was clearly no, we're not. So what
there was a TV show last week and it's been a little bit in the press where, when I work in the charity shop, people will send you stuff that belongs in the bin.
Yeah.
But they can't be bothered, so you get it, and so we put it in bags, so it gets taken away by another company that then sends it abroad to countries that are allegedly less well off. You know, as we know, they exist. But it's tat, and there was this programming somewhere in Africa where it is just mountains and mountains of stuff rubbish nobody can wear. They've gone through stages of turning things back into material and recreating, but they don't even have necessarily the equipment to always do that. So it's just moving this mound of rubbish. If we can't see it, it's therefore dealt with.
Yeah.
And see, it was that was my first sort of thing last week, or the week before it might have been, where I just thought, wow, what are we doing? So we're not, you know, some things do have to be thrown away. There's no question or doubt about that. But it's the fact that we're quite happy to dump it somewhere else. We're quite happy, as long as we don't have to see it, we're quite happy to dump it, whether it be in a charity shop, who then still has to have the volunteers going through everything.
Yeah.
And I've even said to people when they come in, you know, and they're like, oh, we haven't washed it. And I thought, well, we can't have it then. It will end up either in the bin, or we have to sort it to get rid of it. So it's actually manpower, woman power, you know, time
to do it.
But people don't get it, because it's like, I don't want it. If I don't see it, then I've dealt with it. But that isn't good enough, really. No. We've really got to become more conscientious, and it starts with, do we need to have all this stuff? When people send bags that have got clothes that say 50% of the clothes have still got their labels on, it means they've bought them and forgot about them and never worn them.
Yeah.
you know, it's not always a sad story attached to it all. And you just think, wow, how much stuff have you just donated that you've never ever worn?
It's shocking. It's shocking, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's also really interesting, though, to think from what you're saying that people just literally, it's like, I just want to get rid of it. I just want it out of my sight, then it's out of my mind. And then it makes you think, well, how many other things are we doing that with?
Yeah.
Across our lives in so
just
many
shove it away if I don't see it. And there's this idea, so when lockdown first ended, the first time after the big one, obviously everybody had been at home, so people had realized they had too much stuff, so everyone was sorting. And in fact, people in my extended family were calling me up to say, we're going to leave a bag outside, can you pick it up and take it when your charity shop opens? So my garage had become a kind of semi-storage space. And the charity, most charity shops had to limit when they could take donations instead of every day, and people were angry. People were so angry, how dare you not take my donation? And you'd be like, so that energy is all wrong, you know. Charity shop based on volunteers is saying we haven't got any room to move at the back of the shop.
Absolutely.
It's a fire hazard, it's everything. We can't even move to open bags. There was one time I was actually I just got locked in by black bags, and it was kind of funny, but kind of like, I just want to go home.
Yeah,
I've had to move all the bags out the back of the shop to let me move, because I don't know how I'd got trapped. As they were, I guess, as the donations were coming in. But it's realizing what we're doing, and how we're cooperating with what needs to be done. Because if we continue to be consumers at the rates that we have, and then, you know, then you start looking at the cheap labor, you know, the whole kind of the kind of knock-on effect of it all, and then think that once I'm done with it all, I can just dump it here. It's not changing the actual issue at hand, which is, how do we live more simply? Because there, you know, and it ties in a way with the kind of my money work, because I realized my hoarding of food. And growing up in an Indian household, we always had lots of dried products. So I did the same as my mum, bought all these jars and filled it with various dals and lentils and this and that, which I barely ever used, nowhere near as much as my mum would. You know, once in a blue moon, I might get to one of the jars to use. And I thought, that's a form of lack. That's a form of there won't be enough, or just in case I need it and I can't get to the shop. I mean, I live in London. There are shops that are open probably till about midnight, you know, within walking distance. We always used to laugh on Christmas Day. I could buy a mango, you know, near where I used to live before. You know, there was no nothing.
You want it, pretty much.
Yeah, so you can get what you want on tap, but it's this. So there's that sense of, I need it to feel good around me, and then when I'm ready to swap it all, I'll pass it on over there, and I've done my good, haven't I? And actually, no, we haven't, because all we've done is we've added to it, and it takes courage to look at that bit and say, actually, this isn't a pattern that aligns with what I say I'm, you know, wanting to do or attempting to do.
It's interesting the way you drew the similarities in that narrative. So to go back, to come forward, you said that you always wanted, you know, that you felt energy and you felt these connections. So is this how you started earning money straight away, or was there a more complicated path to get to this stage?
No. I mean, I always was going to have my own business, you know, only because I used to watch my dad doing it, and I loved I loved the freedom of what he did, and I just thought he was really cool, you know, and because he'd have wads of cash on his desk and whatever, that I used to smell. Do you remember the smell of money, especially like 70s and 80s, like those pound notes that had that certain smell, and all the notes had a smell that isn't the same anymore. So maybe it was just a different pollution in the air, who knows, or different material that they used, but there was that smell of money. So I used to love the way he did it, of being his own boss. Had no idea that, you know, there was financial struggle in the house with the kids. It was the 70s, nobody told the kids anything, you know. But I didn't. I went to uni, you know, scraped into uni. Then I worked for a local council because my big thing was people.
Okay.
In all of that. Yeah. So as a kid, when I used to see energy around people and know what they could do or know what was going to happen in their life, I could sit on their chair and get a download and all these sort of things. I was that kid. It was people mattered. I just thought, why are people walking around so unhappy, or not unhappy because they're in a job? I'm not anti-career, or anything like that. It was just that kind of thing of or so afraid to do the more, that thing that they want to do.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I couldn't pretty much conceptualize it other than to think, I want to teach people about love. I used to like sit in the back of the car. If I ever got the window seat, there were 3 of us. So there was always a bit of a battle.
Okay.
Staring out the window and just thinking, I would teach about love. And I didn't know what it meant. And money is the energy of love in any case. So it was there. But I worked in mental health.
Okay.
And I kind of set up some day centres in Brent for people that were young, young mental health, because it was just coming out at that point that, oops, we do nothing for young people. It was like, all right, if you've been in the system and come out of kind of long stay hospitals, but there wasn't really much going on for young people. So I was doing that, and I went to work for the department. And I decided I need to go and work for the Department of Health because I wanted to influence policy, because it was like, I'm making change here on the ground, but I wanted to make, what I thought I wanted to do was make bigger change and get into policy. But I was the world's worst employee.
Okay.
Because I would complain and I'd have no qualms. I was young and naive as well, and I had no fear. So I'd just write to the chief executive and tell them what I thought about what they were doing and what, blah, 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 blah.
This is the problem.
This is your problem, and this is what you're not doing, and it's disgusting. And because it was public money as well, And then I went and worked for a couple of the big 5 consultancy companies, thinking maybe I can affect change. I wanted to affect change.
Yeah.
Somewhere, and I was already dabbling in my own business at that point, but sort of doing meditation workshops and little weekend things here and there. And then eventually I think I was, and then I started to do a bit of freelance with these big companies, and I just one day thought, I was writing about this yesterday actually, there's this idea of, I know when I have enough money, I'll give up work and do my own thing, the thing that I really want to do. And I realized that day was never going to come, because there was never enough money, because it was just, I'm about to get another bonus.
Yes,
or,
wait a bit.
Yeah, there's this contract coming up that I can just do, and that would be amazing, and I'll get another few £1,000s to add into my savings thing. And so there's never a right time other than the time that you do it. And there is no magic amount of money that you need as a buffer. You can do spreadsheet after spreadsheet telling yourself, I need this much so when I did that type of thing of I need this much to buffer me and to survive, what I did was I didn't do any work in my business. I just would go to Waitrose to get a nice bit of bread or some rustic roll and make a really lovely sandwich that would take me about 2 hours, and think I've done a bit of work.
Yeah.
So it was, so then I realized my laziness, my fear, my stories to tell me that I didn't have to, that I couldn't. So I hot stepped between freelancing, and then I don't even know exactly what year it would have been, around 2007-8, went full time in my business. And then, hit the wall. You hit the wall, because suddenly you realize, oh,
shit.
So my dreams, this isn't easy. And then came the online explosion.
Yeah.
Which I believe in many ways became self-serving. So the thing I was writing about either yesterday, this bit I wrote about last week was, for a long time I had no problem I was doing healing at home, I was running workshops, whatever. And if people said, no, I'm not coming, or no, I'm not interested, I didn't have an email list or anything like that. I never took it as rejection. It was just like, oh, that's great, because it was just like, it's all going to work anyway. Yeah. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. It was fine. And then came the online world, where they were telling you don't know how to sell, you don't know how to do this, and you don't know how to close, and you don't know, blah, 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 blah. And I was thinking, I've worked in the public sector all my life. I was never taught how to sell. I should have been in, corporate world to learn all these things. You're meant to smile on the telephone and all this malarkey.
Yeah.
And it kind of became an industry within an industry capitalizing on your sense of rejection and feeding your sense of rejection, that how dare these people not want to work with us, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I'm not this, and this whole kind of fuzz of stuff occurred, and it's become more complicated. It's become a lot more complicated. Oh, I need a Facebook group, I need a Facebook page, I need I need an account here to do this, to do this, to do that. When actually you just need to show up and do what you've got to do.
See, I love the simplicity of that. I mean, that's how I sort of know who you are from,
we met online,
personal development things. But a lot of it, and still to this day, I just think it's dirty and nasty. And I just think, I read these people say, I'm my authentic self. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're exactly like that, because you bought that. And that told you to do that. So actually, where are you in all of that? And, exactly as you say, you've got to do all of these things and have this. And then you're not showing up, because you can't possibly show up because you're so busy doing all of that stuff that they've convinced you have to do.
If you try and be just on social media, so there was this thing a few years ago saying you've got to post different things on different social media. So, I fell for it. And then it was like, you've got to create content for Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, page, group, profile, blah, 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 and it's just like, so is my business just the business of creating content, and you lose yourself in it. And that's not to say it doesn't work for some people. I'm sure it does, but for me, it's just that thing of actually, when I changed my business around 2008. So even when I was working, my business was called Heavenly Spaces. Mm-hmm. And then I had by 2008 got about an email list of 5,000. I don't know how, and I hadn't thought, but then I just decided it's got to go. I've got to become the sole agency. So there's a little moment of bereavement and grief with Heavenly Spaces. I love it. I love that name. And I still own the domain name, it's still something that's part of my history. But I said goodbye to my email list, and I put up a page under the sole agent blog, or it might have been sarupashah.com at that point, moving into the sole agency, and said coming soon. And that was when I made my most money, when I had no frills. So there was no website, no sales page, no sign up box for more information, or download this, or do this, do that. Zero. I think I did that in May one year, and by September I probably had about 50 people that just sort of signed up to get the more information. So and I remember
the simplicity of it.
And I say to my clients, right, I say, I'm not advocating that you shouldn't have those things in place, because it's important to build the relationships. However, if you feel that if it's become a condition to I can only have success when I have 10,000 on my list, then you put up a hurdle for yourself. And I remember a couple of years later, so 2011, just as I was launching myself as in the money work, I was going to do a face-to-face workshop, and I used to do them all the time, and now they've become this big thing of like, you've got to have this elongated process to market it, and and it was all I was talking to my coach, and I remember her saying, suddenly she said, how many people are on your list? And I said, I had about 400. And she went, don't do your event. I was like, why? She goes, Sarupa, I love you, I just don't want you to get hurt, you haven't got enough people.
And you were like, what?
I was like, what? I said, I don't even want 400 people at my event. It was going to be it was in a room that could probably fit about 12 people in. And it was hard. It's hard because what happens, the you that knows this is nonsense can be debased, the foundation can go weak, because suddenly you think, well, everybody else is actually thinking and saying the same thing, that I haven't got enough people. And then you start working on getting more people, and then you realize you can't, it doesn't work for everybody. And the days of getting 20, 30,000 lists, I think, pretty much over. I don't want my email box filled in the way that they used to. But so you kind of get taken into that tsunami or wave of, oh my God, I haven't got enough this, I haven't got enough presence, I haven't got enough followers, I haven't got enough this, I haven't, numbers, and then you forget why you are and who you are.
It's really, It's so interesting. So with this 52 conversations, it's been something people have been saying for ages. So when I was in Antigua, I was lucky enough, I ended up having my own radio show on a Friday evening, and I just used to rock up and do it, and music and conversation with someone, great, easy. And people just kept saying to me, you have great conversations with all these people you know all around the world on different things, you should do something. So eventually I was like, okay, let's just get on with it, you know. And actually COVID and my father passing helped me just say, stop messing around, just do this thing, because you know you kind of want to do it. And to this day, I don't check the numbers. I don't look at how many people are listening, how many people aren't listening. I get messages from people, I get emails from people, and I've said to my tech guy, if you want to look at that, you look at that. I said, but that's not why I'm doing this. I'm actually doing this because it's just part of who I am. I like the stories, I like the connection, I know other people enjoy it. If I attach numbers to it, I could suddenly be going, oh no, I'm not going to have, oh my God.
Oh my God, that was terrible.
Yeah.
What happened that month? Or what? And I get, I mean, of course I get why numbers are important at one point, but I often say to my clients, if nobody was looking, would you still do what you do? You know, and they kind of look at you with this, because it's always on Zoom anyway, and it has been for years. I was preparing for the pandemic long before it came. Absolutely. But they look at you with this quizzical thing of, why? But that's what kind of my spiritual teaching has taught me, is if you're, and I used to say this years and years ago, is if you're constantly looking behind you to see who's following you, and this is before the word follow became a social media term, then you've missed the point, because you're not planting the seeds of why you're here. Because we're not here to change the world, we're not here to save the world, we're here to do our bit. And then it was like the relay race analogy I used to use as well. It's like the baton. When we go, or say, right, we've reached the point of what we were here to do, and that might mean that we can do something completely different, or chill, or whatever it is, or it might be that we come to the end of our life. It's just the baton gets picked up by the future generations. But if we've been cricking our neck looking behind like that, then we've made it about our ego, we've made it about needing to know we're doing a good job, instead of saying, this is what I'm here to do, and this is what I'm going to do. So I think it's a really good question, and I do ask myself, would I still do this if no one was looking? And another way of putting it, if people find that really, because I have found with some clients, I find that really difficult to conceptualize, like, because it's like, what do you mean nobody would be looking? Everyone's looking all the time, we're constantly being watched. Would be, if you won the lottery, would you still do what you're doing? And if your answer is no, then you know that you haven't found what you're doing yet, or you haven't found your point of joy in what you're doing. I often, especially if it's like 97 million on the euro, I have to get it, because I say, oh my God, 97 million. Yeah. And I enjoy playing around with that. I always have done since the lottery came out. You know, I don't think I've ever won more than like 170 quid, and I don't do it enough to win anyway. Yeah. Oh, you've got to be in it to win it. But it's just that thing of, actually, I would still do what I'm doing. I wouldn't, I wouldn't want to stop what I'm doing. I wouldn't want to say, well, now I've got money, I don't need to do anything, or I can do something completely different. And if, when I'm having those kind of daydreams, I think, well, maybe I'd do this as well, or add this, and actually that's telling me something that I can bring in, a bit like you with the 52 conversations. There's a point where you think, what am I waiting for? Yeah. There is never that, a bit like when I left my job, there was never that perfect moment. There was never that perfect bank statement that said to me, green light, you're ready to go.
It's okay now, you can proceed.
Yeah, you'll be safe. Even if you get no business, you'll be safe to live off your savings. And no one wants to really live off their savings, because we've saved it for savings, That's and even then, I never understand why we have savings, because you just think, what am I saving for? Rain, and then people say rainy day, and I say, well, don't wish that.
No, absolutely. So that leads really nice into the kind of money stories, and how you came to that point, that being such a thing. What happened? Was it literally your ongoing own money story, and recognizing?
Well, no, because see what happened. So it was 2011 when I outed myself in terms of money, but I had this love of money, like I said, with my dad's wads of cash and smelling it. And I was a pilferer. I'd always take a tenner or a fiver or whatever he had. and just think he had so much that he'd never noticed. Whether he did or didn't, I have no idea, you know. But you know, like, it was just money. I just needed to keep it money, money, money. And I loved earning, but I loved spirituality. And there was this big dilemma, especially back then, because it was, there was this kind of, if you were into spiritual work, you were not into, you know, you didn't care about earning money and blah, blah, blah. So it was a bit of a dilemma for me, because I loved going out and clubbing and blah, 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 and buying nice things and sort of living this split life. But then through my work, I got put forward to do an MBA. Well, I demanded they send me to do an MBA. I was the first and last person, did they realize how much it cost. So they sent me to do this MBA. And that was where, typically, when I should have been in lessons, I was in the pub. It was a kind of, it was a Tuesday afternoon and evening course. Being a student just got me into the pub again. So I'd be like bunking off, drinking, having pints and putting the world to rights. And it was lovely. And that's where it kind of all started to come together about people matter, people matter, people matter. And then I formed this company with a few other people, the 3 of us or 4 of us. And I created a body of work around money. And I just remember this body of work, but as I was doing it, I was kind of looking over my shoulder thinking, oh my God, the universe is going to strike me down. You say you're spiritual and you're talking about money. And I hid it. I hid it away till just before, no, about 2008, around the same time I was leaving Heavenly Spaces and closing it to make my shift. And I was also moving house, and I found it under my dressing table. I knew it was there, but I'd forgotten it. But there were all these journals and notebooks. And I mean, and when I say gap, they had dust on them that was so thick, it's quite embarrassing, but I'd never got in there. Because I knew these were journals I was keeping for a reason, but I didn't know why, and I didn't want to go into them. It wasn't the right time. So it's kind of blowing this dust off, getting a damp cloth to wipe it off this book and plastic kind of covered books. And I saw it all in there, and I thought, oh. And by that point, I was kind of caught up in this frustration of, why can't I make it work? What's wrong? You know, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And I started implementing it myself. I thought, this works. This really works. But it took me another 3 years to bring it out into the world, because I was unsure. You know, like, we all have certain things that we are here to resolve for us, for our journey and our contribution. And one of my big things has been money's not spiritual. And it comes in layers. You know, so sometimes we believe we've hit, oh no, I've hit that point again, that means I didn't deal with it before. No, you just hit a different layer of it. So it kind of comes in different layers, and that's how I put it out into the world. And even then I was a bit like nervous, but I always remember my first group of women that I took through my kind of program that I did. Now I'd been the only one that had kind of gone through this stuff, and then realizing so much more is happening to them that isn't about money. So one of my big things is, come and do some money healing with me, but it's not about the money. And people again look at you with a bit of a quizzical look, but it's never been about the money. Not for me. And I know and at that point there wasn't all this money mindset stuff going on, and that kind of started just beginning to open up. People were talking about wealth consciousness. It was a very kind of American view, and so much of it I was disagreeable with, and then this mindset explosion occurred, as if you've just got to think yourself rich and it's done, you know, like that. Yeah, just like that. And I don't believe that the mind is I don't believe the mind is, for me, the mind isn't to be in the driving seat unless you want it to be. For me, my soul needs to be in the driving seat. So every time my mind or my emotions get in the driving seat, the soul doesn't even get into the car. It's out, it's locked out. But it's getting the mind and the emotions to actually work with the soul, where the soul is in the driving seat. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and that really makes you believe that you've just got to say this affirmation. And I believed in affirmations long before I even knew they were a thing. I used to tell my brother when we were like, he would have been about 5, 6, just starting school, I used to teach him 2 things. One was to be careful of the words he used because it becomes things. How did I know that? And I used to say to him, don't learn how to write at school, just hold the pencil and something else will write for you, because I was into automatic writing.
Okay, cool.
So that's how much of a geek, spiritual geek and anorak I was.
Yeah.
So yes, I believe in affirmations, but they're not, it's not the cure. It's this whole kind of thing. So yeah, that's how I got into it. And even there was this idea in 2011 that people projected to me and then I projected back out, was that I was perfect. Of course I'm financially perfect. And yeah, I was doing well, and I was mortgage free just about then, like I am now, and so there were things that, and those years ago, 10 years ago, I was a bit younger, so it was a bit more flashy to be mortgage free. It just happened that way, It wasn't something that I'd set out to plan. But because of that projection of people assuming that you needed to be perfect, and me assuming that they needed me to be seen as perfect, in the 10 years, I've gone through a massive journey and growth, and my understanding has shifted and changed. At first I was afraid to grow because I thought that's a sign of you're not enough. It's a whole blooming journey again and again, coming back to that same point of panic, and now realizing actually
it's always delving back in to see what's next. What's the next understanding, right?
And what I know today, next year, next week even, or even tomorrow, will be irrelevant. Will be, I've been taught things from spirit where you think, oh, I've learned something. And then a few months later, they'll say, yeah, that bit that you learned, wasn't it? It was just to get you to move along. So it's like the way that we get a Monday every week, but not one Monday is the same. We might say we've got the Monday blues or the Monday this or the, funny Monday feeling, but they're not the same. The seasons are changing, everything's changing, what's around you is changing, we're changing, and all these different things that come into play. So it's never about being sort of static. So I've had the most hairiest financial moments, the most pleasurable, like anybody does. And I don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think we talk about, that doesn't mean we have to talk about the hairy moments only, because it's not about that, but it's about, we don't talk about the fact that when there is growth, I'm going through a massive phase of growth, probably brought on by the pandemic, as a lot of people have.
Yeah.
I'm letting go of a lot of the way I did money work. I want to get back into doing a lot of the soul purpose work, but it's not clear yet. And of course, part of me wants to push and put it into a box and say, this is what I do, because there's a panic.
Yeah.
But we've got to, it's like the seed that's been planted. You can't keep picking at it and tampering. See, have you popped? Have you popped? Have you popped? And then sort of burying it back in. So it's just saying, letting almost, my nature take its course, to say, okay, you've set the things in motion, let it unfold.
It's the organicness of that, isn't it? And I think that's what will bring the gifts. I want to go back to something that you said, because I'm sure there'll be people listening that, so you talked about mind and you talked about emotion, and then you talked about soul. So for people that are listening that are going, well, what's she on about? Where's my soul? How's that different? How do people understand that?
I'd love to tell you that your soul lives here. You know what it is? It's just the other part. It's not the only other part of us that we can't see, because there's more to us in terms of in the unseen world. But it's just a form of energy that exists, that makes that has kind of almost can give us the life that we came here to have. It's our potential. It's part of us that connects us to the universe, to nature, to God, however you want to put it. And it doesn't matter what words people want to use or are comfortable with. And I also appreciate some people listening, or some people anywhere, will be thinking there is no soul, it's just us. I believe, I look in, I was saying to someone the other day, I can't remember what they were talking about exactly, but we're talking about things that we do naturally. So she was talking to me about EFT. And the things we do, like when we're nervous, we might just sort of hold our thumbs, and apparently that's an EFT point, or we rub our So these are all points. And I said we do things innately. And another thing that we do is we look up.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's looking up to the stars. You know, I love astrology. I always have done, and I've been training in it. It doesn't mean I'm going to do people's readings or anything. I do it because it just fascinates me, the whole movement and how it can, you know, the moon controls the tides. You know, nobody can argue against that. So if the moon's controlling our tides, what are the other planets doing? You know, but it's the way we look up. So we're looking up to the stars, to the cosmos, to the universe, and looking for guidance. So it's just another part of us. I don't want to say it's wiser, but it is. But you know, it's not to say that we aren't wise either. But it's a part of us that's a lighter energy that gives us, if we want to, and if we allow it, in terms of we stop fighting against it, it will, when we connect to it, give us a path and guidance. Absolutely. In life.
It's that wisdom, isn't it? I was lucky enough to do an ayahuasca ceremony in March, and so that would have been literally a year after my father's passing, which was, you know, his passing, COVID, lockdown here, really difficult. And I just kept moving through it because I was living with my mum, looking after my mum, just doing stuff. So I knew that I was dealing with it, but I knew emotionally there was stuff. And then I had no qualms whatsoever when my friend said, there's this opportunity that's come up. Do you want to? And I was like, hell yeah. I was like, this is the answer. And I went in with this intention, because we did it, you know, it was very properly done, the diet and everything for it. And my intention was to know that my dad was okay. And, you know, when we shared our intentions, people are looking at me like, oh, that's a big intention. How do you, and, you know, obviously on certain levels, I hadn't thought what that would actually mean for me. So then going into the ayahuasca ceremony and starting it, the first hour and a half-ish was terrifying, because I believed that I had to die to know that he was okay. And because my mind is the way it is, it's quite strong, and I've done all the things that I've done. So I'm trying to talk myself into it, and then saying, oh, you're not Aldous Huxley, you can't track this, you know, as all this psychedelic stuff's going off, and I had pain in my hands and all of this weird stuff. And then fast forward through it, the next morning, having come out the other side of that painful bit and having the most beautiful cathartic experience, I was like, I just felt like I had a conversation with my soul and my spirit, and they allowed me to see that, to a degree, this part of me is just a shadow that's here, and there's so much more on the other side, you know. And people have said to me subsequently, you know, what's it changed? And I said, I just don't get angry anymore. I just don't feel stressed anymore. You know, things come and go, and I just realised, well, it's just not worth it. Do you know what I mean? And I believe 100% it's like that soul intrinsic intuitive guidance that came in, took out a bunch of stuff, moved me forward. So people have said, you know, what did it do? And I said, as far as I'm concerned, it healed all the drama from my previous life, whatever that was. By that, I attached nothing to it other than everything that was traumatic in any way, shape or form. And I feel like it's done it for the future. So when people say to me, soul, spirit, I'm like, yeah. I mean, I've always known that, but for me, that was a pivotal time of, there's so much more out there. And like you say, it doesn't matter what name we want to put to it, just be open to feeling it, because it can give you so much more.
Yeah, it's and equally I respect people that just want to say it doesn't exist. It's not for them, and that's fine, you know, because we've all got to journey the way we've got the way that we choose to journey. Ultimately, you know, there isn't a template that everybody has to become a clone and a one way of thinking and seeing and perceiving the world, because it would be really boring if all we saw was ourselves out there, you know, constantly, you know, and everybody was in agreement. There would be no growth, because you need that fire by friction in any case to grow.
And it's the way you were talking. I love the word that you kept using, layers, and I think it's the understanding that we have so many layers to ourselves, and being brave enough in some ways for people to be vulnerable enough and okay enough to peel back the edges and have a little look at what's under, right, and what might I find,
and to accept that we sometimes, you know, that, so when I first got into my money work, so when I thought I'd excavated and dealt with this money isn't spiritual, so when it came again, I felt like I'd been shot, like maybe I'd been a fraud, you know, like I just made it about me, and I hated myself, thinking, oh, you didn't do it properly, you're rubbish, and blah blah blah, because it was a shock. And then, because again, it's this strive for perfection, this idea that we've reached perfection mountain, it doesn't exist. So it's just allowing yourself to say, okay, and sometimes we don't do things properly, you know, sometimes we don't want to go deep, sometimes we don't hit the point that's going to be the tunnel out of that little kind of energy, and we don't integrate it, and we don't resolve it, and we continue judging it, so we are judging ourselves and blah 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 blah. So we just will face it again at another time, and we just have to accept it. I think some of that for me has come with maturity, and it's a word I used to hate, because when I was in my 20s, I thought I was so blooming mature, you know, like, how dare you even insinuate that I'm not mature? But there is wisdom with age and acceptance that comes, and definitely really significant was when my dad died, which was just coming up to 2 years now, and then we hit lockdown. So it was a kind of a weird, I always think that you have to go through a year at least of the different seasons, because you have the firsts of everything, but it's hugely significant whether you knew your dad, liked your dad, had a relationship with him. It's the energy that shifts and changes of a layer has gone. So, and I was saying to somebody at the weekend, I said, even though my mum's still here, I said, it's like you grow up. And I didn't realize I hadn't grown up, but there was always this layer of they're there. And now the relationship shifts with mum and everything. But in terms of our spiritual path, it's part of the journey. It comes at the right time, at the right point, that's going to awaken us to explore different parts of ourselves. And I think you can definitely get a different level of courage to say, I want to face things. Because there's a reality, isn't there? Because there is a finite. People say there's no time. Well, yeah, but there is. You know, we're not here forever.
No, and it's kind of then, and I think, I mean, definitely for me, off the back of my father passing, it's like, okay, time is really important, and it's really important to actually do exactly what I want to do with my time, with the people that I vibe with, and to not worry about the rest of it. In terms of, you know, if people don't like me, don't want to talk to me, don't like what I do, I don't care. It's never been my business, but to me, this just reaffirmed even more. Just keep walking your path.
And it's just that kind of, you know what? So I might mess up. It might all go a bit wrong for a little while, but generally it's okay. You get out of it. It might take, you know, you might have a few months, few weeks, few days of like, you know, having to lick a few wounds here and there, but it's okay. It's part of the learning. It's part of everything. I think we could, because I don't want to blame social media, but there is that polished look thing that exists, and you know, it's not just me saying it, it's a thing, you know, but it's this idea of, I can't, if you'd have waited till everything was perfect before you did your 52 conversations, you'd still be waiting, you know, like what does that perfect look like? You know, I can't do it yet, I'm not ready. You know, if I'd have listened to my coach then about not doing that, what I call the workshop, they call a live event, because I only had 400 people on my list. I mean, I was really like,
and you did it. I
did it. Well, no, I did it, and I was on the phone.
I see.
And I just, because I was just a bit like, what? I mean, I couldn't believe it was my first experience of coaching that told you, no, don't do it. And yes, there are things that, you know, if I said I wanted to do a 10,000 people event, I'd expect somebody to say to me, right, hold your horses.
Stop.
You know, perhaps stop and just have a little think about what you can do to build up to that, you know, because we can get a bit grandiose as well. But it was, it's just, it's just knowing that it's okay. And it, you know, and of course I have put on events where I've maybe been half-hearted and half-assed, that haven't filled in the way that I'd hoped or planned or had a sense that they would or they wouldn't. You know, we've all got those things, and then we initially you think the whole world can smell it on me. They know I'm a failure, and then you realise no one gives a hoot. You know, just get on with it.
Because everybody else is doing their own thing, right?
Yeah, no one's really looking at you that closely. And if they are, you know, tough, that's their lookout. But it's, you know, so I've my first ever telly class that I launched many years ago, so in 2006. This is to my then sort of almost 5,000 email list. Did a lovely you know, all this email marketing stuff. Nobody came, and it was on an offer price. So, but I didn't go into a hole. I was just like, weird. Anyway, so I launched it again at the price I said I was going to launch it. So I stuck to my guns. It was, I think I launched the real price was something like 297. I'd launched it at half price, and when I did it 297 to the same people on my email list, I had 8 people turn up to pay, and I thought the week before they could have done it for half the price. I think you've frozen there.
Oh, I'm still here. Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry. I hope your editor can take that bit out, because you just froze. But yeah, so I can't remember the point I was making. So we're going to have a little gap there. I was talking about there.
That's okay. And the fact of basically following your instincts and doing what's right for you.
Yeah, but it was just it was the thing was, it's not making a song and dance about that must be a sign I'm a failure. And what really amused me in that, literally the week before they could have got it for half price.
Yeah.
And then I relaunched it with a new date for full price, and the same people that had seen it for half price paid. And I just thought, it's quite amusing. They obviously, and it was the beginnings of me understanding a bit about pricing and the energy, even though I wasn't necessarily understanding it in that moment. It was the seeds being planted, because there's that whole thing of we can price ourselves into invisibility, both at the low end and at the high end. You know, it's just how it goes. But it's just, you know, so what, it didn't work. Either realize that sometimes I realized I didn't want to do it anyway. I was just doing something because I thought I better look like I'm launching something. Because if you're not launching something every week as a kind of online business coachy service led kind of person, there must be something wrong with you if you're not launching. And it's really tiring, you know. I'm not.
And then you're not coming to it in your truth anyway, then, are you? Because you're just doing it because you feel like you should be doing it because that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I've got to look busy. I've got to look like I'm really busy. You know, and yet then you've got people telling you, don't be busy, don't be burning out. You know, and I've developed this new thing recently. And I'm looking at my sofa now, which I call my Barbara Cartland look.
Okay, cool.
And especially when it's sunny like this, I go and lie on my sofa, just stare out at the window. And I mean, it's all still looking a little bit lush. It was a bit lusher a few months ago when the garden was a bit more spring and summery. And just stare out, and then I might get myself something to eat, you know, and just like, and I kind of giggle because I can just need like somebody to feed me grapes or something, you know. But it's that thing of we are addicted to busy. We're addicted to, I need to think about that. Even when people are meditating, I find, and I've done it myself, where you're thinking, you're not actually meditating, you've gone into a quiet space to think, oh, I need to do this.
Give yourself a list.
Good idea. Yeah. So we're doing it in such a serene way that we're convincing ourselves we must be meditating. Oh yes, that idea. But yes, I've got to contact that person. And we're just doing this whole thing. So we're having a bit of quiet time to do our to-do list, but we're not actually meditating.
We're just fooling ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah, shifting our frequency or doing nothing. So the art of doing nothing is hugely misunderstood. Because some people say doing nothing means not being in your business. No, doing nothing means doing nothing. It doesn't mean going off and if I'm doing the gardening, I'm gardening. If I'm cooking, I'm cooking.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but that's not doing nothing.
No.
If I'm reading a book, it's doing something. If I'm watching a film, it's doing something. You know, all these things that people attribute to self-care. But the art of doing nothing is an art, because it is literally daydreaming. And I used to daydream all the time as a kid, like I said, in the back of the car. Usually because we'd have gone somewhere. Now it's probably only 15 minutes from home, but when you're a kid, that's like 10 hours.
Yeah.
In the back of a car with your mum and dad arguing because dad's driving too fast and mum's telling him to slow down. And it's like I always think of it as like a 70s argument in the car. Slow down, you know, like, oh. And us kids in the back having argued about which one has to sit in the middle. I'd just be like daydreaming out the window. Or if it was the estate car, lying in the boot, just sort of looking out the back window and just
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a great image, and maybe it's a really good. I mean, it's been a great conversation, and we could go on, but I'm conscious we're kind of at the end.
My God, it's gone so quick.
I know it has gone so quick. I mean, we have to do another one at some point, and maybe a bit more focused. But actually, it's a really nice place to leave it with you telling people
daydream
about daydreaming, because I'm like, now I quite fancy a daydream later on.
Oh, I tell you what, daydreaming is how you manifest. Daydreaming is how you just shift your frequency. Again, a little bit like the art of doing nothing. It's so underrated, not just because we were told not to daydream at school, you know, because I don't want to blame schools and all of that. It's made me who I am. My education got me to question everything to be who I am. But yeah, daydreaming. Maybe we can talk more about daydreaming next time, because it is a beautiful art. Yeah.
Cool. It's been an awesome conversation. Thank you ever so much for spending time with us. And when this goes out, I'll ask you for a nice photo of yourself, and we'll put all your links so people can come and check out what it is that you do in more ways and reach out to you if they want to.
Thank you, Janice, for having me.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Go and do a bit of daydreaming on your sofa.
Okay, I'm about to. I can feel it.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.